Welcome back to Global Home Show. I am your host, Collins Yemodu Andrew. In today's episode, we are tackling one of the most talked about topics in Nigerian real estate, the rent-to-own housing scheme. Is it the golden ticket to home ownership for millions of Nigerians who are currently locked out of the traditional mortgage market? Or does it promise more than it can deliver? We have a packed show for you. In our news segment, we will bring you the latest development from the housing sector. Then, our analysis segment asks the big question: rent to own, dream solution or false hope? And finally, we will hear from three key voices in our Vox Pop segment. Stay with us.
We begin with our news segment and our top story. Nigeria ranks fourth most expensive rental market in Africa. Driven by near monthly price hikes, Nigeria now ranks among Africa's most expensive nations for renters. A new report has found that average rent of two-bedroom apartments across Africa's most important cities, placing Lagos fourth among the top 10 most expensive cities to rent on the continent. Lagos follows Abidjan, Cape Town, and Accra, which are ranked first, second, and third respectively. Others are Douala, Nairobi, Kigali, Dar es Salaam, Cairo, and Casablanca. According to the report compiled by Forten and Company, a real estate research and advisory firm, the average rent for a luxury two-bedroom apartment in Lagos' high-end neighborhoods like Ikoyi, Banana Island, and Victoria Island is about $19.379, that is 26.8 million naira per annum. Ghana's prime real estate market attracts Nigerian capital. A growing number of Nigerian investors are exploring Ghana's high-end real estate market as a strategic hedge and a lifestyle play. This is apparent after Devdraco Group, a Ghanaian real estate firm, opens its flagship development to Nigerian buyers seeking structured entry into Accra's most prestigious neighborhoods. The group emphasized the importance of location discipline and long-term positioning, principles that underpin development such as the Address, Alo Cantonment, and the Pelican. These projects combine architectural quality with measured investment logic, strong rental absorption, professional estate management, and payment flexibility that supports capital planning. Projected rental yields between 5 to 10% in prime zones reflect not high from expatriates, diplomats, and corporate tenants. In other news, stakeholders advocate new development model to tackle housing crisis. Experts under the International Real Estate Federation have called for the urgent adoption of integrated development frameworks, including public-private people policy partnerships, to address Nigeria's deepening housing crisis. They also urged policymakers to stop viewing housing as a welfare issue, but rather as a critical foundation for economic participation, improved health outcomes, social stability, and human dignity. The call was made by the President of Federation Nigeria Chapter, Akin Opatola, during a presentation at the Federation's Spring Symposium held at the United Nations headquarters in New York City.
Welcome back. In a country where owning a home remains one of the most elusive milestones for the average citizen, rent-to-own housing schemes emerge as a glimmer of hope. They offer Nigerians the opportunity to transition from tenants to homeowners without the burden of lump sum payment or inaccessible bank mortgages. But is that hope justified? Let's start by defining what rent-to-own actually means, and then we take it from there.
Rent-to-own, dream solution, or false hope. Rent-to-own is a structured scheme that allows tenants to acquire their houses by paying rent over a period, with those payments gradually contributing towards eventual ownership. It combines the flexibility of renting with the long-term benefits of owning a home. making it potentially a game changer for Nigeria's struggling housing sector. The federal government has thrown its weight behind this model. At the African International Housing Show in Abuja, the immediate past housing minister, Ahmad Musa Dangiwa, announced two groundbreaking interventions through the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. He said, recognizing the reality that not everyone is ready to own a home, we have introduced the rent-to-own scheme, which enables eligible Nigerians to move into homes while making monthly payment toward ownership. The rental assistance product helps Nigerians pay their annual rent in advance with flexible monthly repayment terms. These are practical tools to ease housing pressure, particularly for urban workers and young families. But here's where the dream meets reality. Even with Nigeria's recently approved minimum wage of 70,000 naira, the math rarely works. Rent-to-own schemes in urban centers like Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt often require monthly payments ranging from 150,000 naira to 300,000 naira. For a worker earning the minimum wage, these figures represent not just financial strain, but outright exclusion. The affordability challenge runs deeper, with over 60% of Nigerians earning less than 100,000 naira monthly. Traditional mortgage options remain inaccessible for the majority. A rent-to-own structure could allow gradual acquisition without heavy upfront payments, but only if the numbers align with what people can actually afford. However, the real problem runs deeper than affordability, and it's one that developers and financiers are struggling with. When tenants default on payment, developers find themselves trapped in legal quicksand, unable to reclaim properties through the judicial system. Nigeria foreclosure laws, where they exist, are largely outdated and burdened by procedural bottlenecks. According to the Center for Affordable Housing Finance in Africa, the foreclosure timeline in Nigeria averages 1,050 days, nearly 3 years from default to repossession. To understand how far behind we are, let's look at our neighbors. In South Africa, the average foreclosure process takes 3 to 6 months. Ghana introduced the Borrowers and Lenders Act in 2008, allowing for non-judicial foreclosure and reducing timelines to fewer than 180 days in most cases. The CEO of UPDC PLC, Odunayo Ojo, put it bluntly in a recent interview. Rent-to-own is something that we have tried before, and right now, we are not considering it. One of the reasons is our foreclosure laws. When somebody is renting to own, sometimes when they default, you have to go to court to get the occupants out. And those cases can go on for many years. We have cases going for 10 years or more, he said. 10 years. That's the risk developers face. And when developers absorb that risk, they respond in predictable ways by pulling back entirely or increasing prices to offset legal exposure. Ironically, shutting out the same low to medium income Nigerians these schemes were created to serve. Beyond foreclosure, Nigeria faces additional obstacles. Land titling is riddled with delays and inconsistencies. Many developers cannot perfect titles, leaving them without enforceable collateral. There's also the requirement for governor's consent under the Land Use Act of 1978, a process that can take 6 months to 2 years depending on the state. Legal practitioners point to another complication. Rent-to-own schemes operate on hybrid contracts that combine tenancy and conditional purchase agreements. When an occupant defaults, legal ambiguities arise. Is the person to be treated as a tenant, a purchaser, or both? In the absence of clear enforcement mechanisms, developers spend years in litigation. So, where does this leave the aspiring homeowner? Real estate experts have offered their perspective on the issue. To them, the rent-to-own model is a game changer. However, its scalability and long-term viability are increasingly undercut by the lack of a dependable legal framework for foreclosure and asset recovery. Without guaranteed recourse, developers are forced to either avoid rent-to-own schemes altogether or load the financial risk onto the tenants in the form of higher rent, more stringent terms, or shortened contracts. And that defeats the very essence of rent-to-own, which is designed for affordability, accessibility, and empowerment. Despite these challenges, there are innovative responses emerging from the private sector. FMBN's rent-to-own program has delivered tangible results with over 15 billion naira disbursed to more than 1,100 Nigerians. And a new diaspora mortgage product developed with the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission aims to unlock the over $20 billion in annual remittances for housing finance. For the 1,140 Nigerians who have already benefited from FMMB's program, it's a dream realized. For the developers trapped in decade-long litigation over defaults, it's a nightmare. For the millions who cannot afford 150,000 naira monthly payments, it remains out of reach entirely. What's clear is that rent to own has potential. It addresses a genuine need in a country where over 60% of the population cannot access traditional mortgages. It offers a pathway for informal sector workers, young professionals, and diaspora Nigerians who want to invest in property back home. But potential alone is not enough. For rent to own to truly scale, Nigeria needs structural reforms, uniform foreclosure laws applicable across states, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms for property repossession, balanced legal protection for both tenants and developers, and institutional backing from the central bank, RIDAN, and FMBN.
We have heard the analysis, but what do those on the front line think? We spoke with 3 stakeholders about their experience with rent-to-own schemes. Let's listen in.
All right, my name is Thomas Moses. I'm into window blind, furnishing, and home decor. So regarding the policy that has to do with rent to own in house, it's a very good policy. However, I think it favors more of the civil servants because these people, these contractors, they'll prefer a civil servant that they are sure of their regular income and all of that, not really specifically for small business owners like us. So, and I would say that it's a good thing. Sometimes it could be expensive, but I'm of the point that no matter how expensive it is, you are paying the rent and knowing that after few years it becomes yours. I think the burden is more lighter because for you to go out of it to go and build your own house, to own it, it takes more time and it takes more resources, and sometimes you run into problems with different kind of people, both the agencies, the estate, and all of that. So I don't feel rent to own a house is a very good policy if it could be extended not just only to civil servants but also to low income earners and private sectors. That will really be a good thing for them.
I'm Sami Banki Abe. I'm a printer by profession. The idea of renting an apartment and owning it at the same time is a good idea, but in most cases, when you look at the cost at which the developer will give it out, you will say, oh, this is too much. If I have half of this money, I can be able to own the same building at half cost of what the developer is giving you. So with that discourages people to invest into such ownership system because of the cost at which the developer will give it out. Everybody wants to own a house, but the cost of owning a house, especially in Abuja, that cost is very, very high. Even when government gives their housing out to civil servants, the only benefit they have is they pay at ease. They pay while working and they deduct from source. That is why in most cases they don't even have that feeling that they are paying for the house. But if you consider the cost and you are to build that particular house, you discover that the cost is higher than you having the money and building that same building.
for me, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy like that because the rate is too high. And two, some people maybe afford the first rent, but when they started living inside, for them to continue paying rent every year, some may not meet up, and some may have the money, but to pay will be a problem for them. So for my own understanding, it's not going to be easy or going to be possible like that.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of Global's Home Show. Today, we have explored the promise and the peril of rent-to-own housing schemes in Nigeria. We have learned, first, rent-to-own addresses a genuine need. It offers a pathway to home ownership for millions who are currently locked out of traditional mortgages. Second, government and private sector initiatives are making progress with thousands of Nigerians already benefiting. But third, and most critically, the legal and regulatory framework is not keeping pace. Outdated foreclosure laws, unclear contracts, and lengthy court processes are undermining the very model designed to help. The dream is real, but without urgent legal reforms, it risks becoming just another false hope for millions of Nigerians. Join us in the next episode of Global Homes Show, where we will be exploring the diasporal dilemma investing in Nigerian real estate from abroad. We will examine the opportunities, the risks, and how Nigerians overseas can navigate the market safely. Thank you for watching. I am Collins Imodu Andrew. Remember, the journey to home ownership begins with knowledge. Stay informed, ask the right questions, and we will see you next time.